At 10:23 in the morning, my daughter-in-law Cassandra stood in a courtroom confidently telling a judge I had advanced Alzheimer's and needed a conservatorship immediately. By 11:47, she was being escorted out in handcuffs after I recited every conversation she'd had for the past 6 months, revealed I was a retired neurologist who'd been faking symptoms deliberately, and played recordings of her planning to sell my house, drain my accounts, and put me in the cheapest nursing home she could find. She thought my confused rambling and repeated questions meant I was losing my mind. She didn't know I have a photographic memory and decades of training in cognitive assessment. She didn't know every symptom I displayed was textbook perfect because I literally wrote the textbook. And she definitely didn't know about the recording devices I'd hidden in every room of my house. I'd begged her to reconsider. The day she first mentioned a nursing home, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Cassandra, I'm not sick. I'm testing you." She just smiled that patient smile people use with confused elderly people and said, "That's exactly what someone with dementia would say, Diane. You don't even realize how far gone you are." She erased my competence to steal my estate. She wanted me declared incompetent. I decided to show her what real competence looks like. Because when I stood up in that courtroom and delivered a 15-minute presentation on neurological assessment without notes, I didn't just prove I was sound of mind. I proved she'd spent 6 months trying to rob a woman who'd been documenting her every move with the precision of a medical researcher conducting a case study. If you're watching this and thinking about clicking away, ask yourself, are you doing what Cassandra did? Taking without giving back, consuming without supporting. I spent 6 months pretending to forget my own name to document elder abuse, and you can't spend 3 seconds hitting subscribe. Here's what's interesting. Cassandra thought she deserved my estate without earning my trust. You might be thinking you deserve this content without supporting the channel. See the pattern? If you believe respect is earned through character, not manipulation, hit subscribe. Let me know what city you're watching from. Only people like Cassandra think that's too much to ask. My name is Diane Ashford, and I'm 73 years old. What I'm about to tell you is the story of the most elaborate test I've ever conducted. Not in a laboratory or a hospital, but in my own home. Not on a stranger, but on my own family. It's a story about what people do when they think you can't understand what's happening to you. And it's a story about the cold, methodical justice that comes from being underestimated by people who should have known better. Let me start by telling you who I really am, because understanding my background is essential to understanding why this test was so devastating when I revealed it. I am a retired neurologist. I practiced medicine for 41 years. I specialized in degenerative cognitive diseases, particularly Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. I've assessed thousands of patients over 4 decades. I've testified as an expert witness in hundreds of competency hearings. I literally co-authored a diagnostic manual on early-onset dementia that's used in medical schools across the country. I know exactly what real cognitive decline looks like, the specific patterns, the progression timeline, the behavioral markers, the language changes, the memory lapses, every symptom, every stage, every detail, which means I also know exactly how to fake it, convincingly, perfectly, in a way that would fool almost any family member and most general practitioners. I retired 3 years ago at the age of 70 after a long and successful career. I was financially comfortable. I owned my home outright, a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood that I'd bought 32 years ago for $90,000 and was now worth $620,000. I had a pension from the hospital where I'd worked for 30 years. I had retirement accounts worth $1.1 million. I had excellent health insurance. I was independent, active, healthy, and sharp as I'd ever been. My husband Richard had died 8 years earlier from pancreatic cancer. It was fast and brutal, 6 weeks from diagnosis to death. We'd been married 38 years. I missed him every single day. But I'd built a good life for myself after his passing. I had friends, hobbies, volunteer work at the free clinic. I was content. I have one son. His name is Michael. He's 45 years old. He works in pharmaceutical sales, makes about $110,000 a year. He's been married to Cassandra for 12 years. They have 2 children, Emma, who's 10, and Josh, who's 8. Michael was always a good son when he was growing up. Smart, kind, hardworking. Richard and I put him through college, helped with his wedding, helped with the down payment on his first house. We thought we'd raised him right. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Or maybe it was always there and I just didn't want to see it. Cassandra is 42 years old. She doesn't work. She claims to be a full-time mother, but Emma and Josh are both in school full days now. What she actually does is shop, get her nails done, have lunch with friends, and spend money faster than Michael can make it. She comes from money. Her parents are wealthy, old family wealth, the kind where nobody's had to actually work in 3 generations. But they cut her off when she was 25 for reasons I was never entirely clear on. Something about her spending habits and refusing to work and a trust fund she burned through in 18 months. So when she married Michael, she expected him to provide the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. And he tried. God, he tried. But $110,000 a year doesn't go as far as she wanted it to go. I noticed things over the years. The way she'd hint about needing money, the way she'd make comments about my house, about how big it was for just one person, about what a shame it was that I couldn't really enjoy it at my age, the way she'd talk about inheritance and estate planning with a frequency that made me uncomfortable. But Michael seemed happy, and I loved my grandchildren. So I ignored the red flags. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Cassandra was just thoughtless sometimes, not malicious. Then 2 years ago, something happened that changed my perspective entirely. We were all having dinner at my house. Michael, Cassandra, the kids. It was Emma's 8th birthday. I'd made her favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread. We were having a lovely time. The kids were in the living room watching a movie. Michael had gone to the garage to help me find some old photo albums Emma wanted to see. Cassandra thought I was in the bathroom. I wasn't. I was in the hallway just out of sight when I overheard Cassandra on her phone. "Yeah, we're at Diane's," she was saying. "Birthday thing for Emma. I know, it's exhausting. But we have to stay on her good side." Pause. Because she's sitting on over $1 million in assets, that's why. The house alone is worth over $600,000, plus whatever she has in retirement accounts. Michael's an only child. It all comes to us eventually. My blood went cold. I don't know. A few more years, maybe? She's 71. How much longer can she have? And honestly, she's already slipping. Forgot my birthday last month. Repeated the same story twice at Christmas. I think it's starting. Pause. Laugh. Yeah, exactly. And if it gets bad enough, we can get power of attorney or conservatorship or whatever. Make sure she doesn't blow it all on some scam or donate it to some charity. Secure our future. You know? I stood in that hallway listening to my daughter-in-law discuss my cognitive decline and my eventual death like she was planning a vacation, calculating when I'd die, hoping I'd develop dementia so they could control my money. I didn't confront her that night. I smiled through the rest of dinner, hugged my grandchildren goodbye, told Michael and Cassandra to drive safely, and then I sat in my quiet house and thought about what I'd heard. I wasn't slipping. I hadn't forgotten Cassandra's birthday. I deliberately not acknowledged it because I'd overheard her the week before complaining about how cheap my gifts always were. I hadn't repeated a story at Christmas. Michael had asked me the same question twice, and I'd answered it twice. She was seeing what she wanted to see, looking for signs of decline that would justify taking control of my assets. And in that moment, I made a decision. I was going to give her exactly what she was looking for. I was going to fake the symptoms she wanted to see. I was going to pretend to decline, and I was going to document every single thing she did in response. Because I needed to know the truth. I needed to know if my son would protect me or exploit me, if my daughter-in-law was just thoughtless or actually malicious. if my grandchildren were being raised to value me as a person or as an inheritance. I needed to run a test, the most important test of my life. So I started planning, carefully, methodically, with all the precision I'd used in my medical career. First, I researched recording devices. I bought small cameras that looked like phone chargers, picture frames, clocks. I placed them in my living room, kitchen, home office, all legal, recording in my own home, single-party consent state. I could record anyone who entered my house without their knowledge or permission. Second, I started a journal. Not a regular journal, but a research log, the kind I'd kept during my years conducting clinical studies. Date, time, behavior observed, my response, their reaction. Every interaction documented with scientific precision. Third, I visited my attorney, Harold Chen. I'd worked with him for 20 years on my estate planning. I trusted him completely. I sat in his office and explained what I'd overheard, what I was planning to do. Harold listened, his expression growing more concerned as I talked. "Diane," he said when I finished, "what you're describing could be dangerous. If they really believe you're incompetent, they might try to take legal action." "I know," I said. "That's what I'm counting on. I want to see how far they'll go." "And if they try to have you declared incompetent, then I'll prove I'm not, in court, with evidence of their fraud. But Harold, I need you to protect my assets in the meantime. I need to know they can't actually access anything, even if they get temporary authority." We spent 3 hours restructuring my estate. The house went into an irrevocable trust with me as the lifetime beneficiary. My retirement accounts were protected with ironclad beneficiary designations that couldn't be changed without my direct authorization and third-party verification of competency. My liquid assets were moved to accounts that required Harold's co-signature for any withdrawals over $1,000. "If they get a judge to grant them conservatorship," Harold said, "they'll have access to some things, but the bulk of your estate will be untouchable. And the moment you prove competency, everything reverts to your full control." "Perfect," I said. Fourth, I made an appointment with my primary care physician, Dr. Sarah Winters. I'd known Sarah for 15 years. She was sharp, ethical, and would understand what I was doing. I explained the situation, showed her the journal entries, told her about my plan. "You want me to not diagnose cognitive decline if Michael brings you in?" she asked. "I want you to assess me accurately," I said, "and document that assessment thoroughly. If they claim I'm declining and you have records showing I'm completely competent, that will be powerful evidence when this comes to court." Sarah looked at me for a long moment. "You know this is going to be painful, watching your own family try to exploit you." "I know," I said, "but I need the truth. And I need documentation to protect myself if the truth is as bad as I fear." She agreed. We did a full cognitive assessment that day, memory tests, reasoning tests, executive function assessments. She documented everything. I scored in the 99th percentile for my age group. "I'll keep this in your file," she said. "And Diane, be careful. People do terrible things when money is involved." Everything was in place. My assets were protected. My attorney was informed. My doctor was documenting my actual cognitive status. The recording devices were installed. The journal was ready. Now came the hard part. I had to start the decline. I started small. Little things that Cassandra and Michael might not even consciously notice, but would register subconsciously. I started asking them to repeat things. "What was that, dear?" "I'm sorry, can you say that again?" Nothing excessive, just often enough to plant a seed. I started forgetting small details of conversations. Michael would mention something they'd discussed the week before, and I'd look confused. "Did we talk about that? I don't remember." I started losing track of dates. "Wait, is today Tuesday? I thought it was Wednesday." Simple mix-ups that elderly people often make, but with just slightly more frequency than normal. 3 weeks into my performance, I noticed Cassandra and Michael exchanging looks, concerned glances. She'd mentioned something I'd supposedly said last week, and I'd responded with confusion. Michael looked at Cassandra with this expression of worried confirmation. Yes, it was working. They were seeing what they wanted to see. Month 2, I escalated slightly. I called Michael at work to ask him something, then called back 30 minutes later with the same question. I acted confused when he pointed out I'd just called. Did I? Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I must have forgotten. That weekend, they showed up unannounced. Just wanted to check on you, Mom, Michael said. They walked through the house with careful eyes, looking for signs of neglect, dirty dishes, unpaid bills, spoiled food in the fridge. They found nothing because I was maintaining everything perfectly, but I could see the disappointment on Cassandra's face. She wanted to find evidence of decline, so I gave her some. I left a few dishes in the sink, let some mail pile up on the kitchen table. Nothing concerning, just slightly less tidy than my normal standard. The next visit, Cassandra noticed immediately. Diane, have you been having trouble keeping up with things? The house is a bit messy. Oh, is it? I looked around vaguely. I suppose I've been distracted lately. Distracted by what? I'm not sure, just things feel confusing sometimes. That evening, I heard Michael and Cassandra talking in my driveway before they left. My bedroom window was open, and they didn't realize I could hear them. She's definitely getting worse, Cassandra said. Did you see the look on her face when I asked about the dishes? She didn't even realize the house was messy. I'm worried about her, Michael said. I know, baby, but we need to start thinking practically. What if she gets really bad? What if she can't live alone anymore? We can't afford full-time care. I know, but your mom has assets. She could afford to be in a nice facility, or, pause, we could look into having her live with us. In a way that makes financial sense. What do you mean? I mean, if we're going to take care of her, we should be compensated for it. She has the house, the retirement accounts. There are ways to structure this so we're not sacrificing our financial future to care for her. Cassandra, that feels mercenary. It's not mercenary, it's practical. Michael, your mother is going to need expensive care soon. Either she pays for it in a facility, or we provide it and get compensated fairly. I'm not saying we steal from her. I'm saying we protect our interests while helping her. I guess that makes sense. Of course it does. And if she gets bad enough that she can't make decisions, we might need to get legal authority, power of attorney or conservatorship, just to make sure she doesn't get taken advantage of by anyone else. Anyone else? You know, scammers. They target elderly people with dementia. We'd be protecting her. I listened to this conversation, my heart breaking. My son wasn't pushing back, wasn't defending me, wasn't questioning whether I was really declining or if his wife was seeing what she wanted to see. He was agreeing, considering, planning. Month 3, I escalated further. I started repeating questions within the same conversation. How's Emma's soccer going? Then 10 minutes later, Michael, how's Emma doing in soccer this year? Mom, I just told you. Did you? I'm sorry, I don't remember. I started mixing up my grandchildren's names, calling Josh Emma and Emma Josh, innocent mistakes, but consistent enough to be concerning. I started asking what day it was more frequently, started seeming confused about what we'd eaten for dinner. Every incident was carefully calculated. I knew exactly what behaviors indicated early cognitive decline. I displayed them at precisely the right frequency and severity to suggest stage 1, early onset Alzheimer's. And I documented everything in my journal, every symptom I faked, every reaction they had, every word they said. Month 4, Cassandra started suggesting I see a doctor. Diane, I'm worried about you. You've been so forgetful lately. I think maybe we should have you checked out. Checked out for what? Just your memory. Make sure everything's okay. I looked at her with the vague confusion I'd perfected. Is my memory bad? I hadn't noticed. That's part of the problem, honey. Sometimes people don't notice their own decline. I let her make the appointment. Dr. Winters, of course. The doctor who had my actual cognitive assessment on file showing I was completely competent. The 3 of us went together, Michael, Cassandra, and me. I played my part perfectly. seemed a bit confused about why we were there, answered Dr. Winter's questions with deliberate vagueness. But when Cassandra and Michael stepped out for a moment, I locked eyes with Dr. Winters and gave the slightest nod. She understood. She did a basic cognitive screening, simple questions, memory tests. I answered them well enough to not seem completely impaired, but poorly enough to be concerning. Right on the borderline. Suspicious, but not diagnostic. "Mrs. Ashford," Dr. Winters said carefully, "you're showing some signs of mild cognitive impairment. It could be normal aging, stress, depression, or it could be early dementia. I'd like to refer you to a neurologist for more comprehensive testing." "A neurologist?" I asked, letting worry show on my face. "Is it serious?" "We don't know yet. That's what the testing will tell us." In the car afterward, I could feel Cassandra's barely contained excitement. She was getting the diagnosis she wanted. "Don't worry, Diane," she said, reaching back to pat my hand. "We're going to take care of you, no matter what." Month 5, they started making plans. I overheard more conversations, phone calls they thought I couldn't hear, discussions in my own living room while I was supposedly napping upstairs. "The neurologist can't see her for 3 months. The wait list is insane." 3 months? "Michael, anything could happen in 3 months. She could sign something, give money away. We need to protect her assets now." "How?" "Power of attorney. We can get her to sign a document giving us authority to manage her finances, just as a safety measure, until we know how serious this is." "Do you think she'd sign it? In her state?" "Absolutely. We just position it as us helping her. Taking stress off her plate, she'll probably be relieved." "What if she's not as impaired as we think?" "Michael, you've seen her. She can't remember what we talked about 10 minutes ago. She called Josh Emma 3 times last week. She's declining, and if we don't protect her assets now, she could destroy her own financial security." 2 days later, they showed up with papers. "Mom, we want to talk to you about something," Michael said. They sat me down at my kitchen table. Cassandra had a folder of documents, professional looking, expensive paper, lawyer prepared. "Diane, we've been so worried about you," Cassandra began. "The memory issues, the confusion, we want to help." "Help how?" "We think it would be good for you to have some support managing things, bills, finances, appointments, just until we know what's going on with your health." Michael pulled out papers. "This is a power of attorney document, Mom. It would give Cassandra and me authority to help you manage your accounts, pay your bills, handle paperwork. We'd still consult with you on everything, but we'd have the legal authority to handle things if you're having a hard time." I looked at the papers with feigned confusion. "I don't understand. Why do you need this?" "Because we love you," Cassandra said sweetly, "and we want to make sure you're protected. What if you forget to pay a bill, or someone tries to scam you? This way we can help." I pretended to consider it, looked at the papers with uncertain eyes. "I don't know. This feels big." "It's really not, Mom," Michael said. "It's just a safety net. You'd still be in control. We'd just be there to help." "Do I need to have a lawyer look at this?" Cassandra's smile tightened slightly. "You could, but it's a standard document. We had it drawn up by a lawyer already, all perfectly legal and protective of your interests." I could see it in her eyes. She didn't want me talking to my lawyer. She wanted me to sign this quickly, while I was confused enough to not ask too many questions. "I need to think about it," I said. "Mom, there's really nothing to think about," Michael said, a hint of frustration entering his voice. "We're trying to help you." "I know, honey, but this feels like a big decision. Can I sleep on it?" Cassandra's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "Of course, Diane. Take all the time you need. We just want what's best for you." They left the papers on my kitchen table. The moment they were gone, I photographed every page, sent them to Harold Chen, called him. "Harold, they're trying to get me to sign a power of attorney." "Don't sign anything," he said immediately. "Bring the documents to my office tomorrow." I did. Harold reviewed them with a deepening frown. Diane, this is incredibly broad. They'd have access to everything. Your bank accounts, your retirement funds, your property. They could sell your house, drain your accounts, anything. And it's deliberately worded to be difficult to revoke. Can they force me to sign it? Not while you're competent. But if they can get a doctor to say you're incapacitated, they could petition for conservatorship. That's court-ordered control. Much harder for you to fight. Then we need to make sure I never appear incapacitated enough for that. Or, Harold said slowly, we let them try. And we crush them in court with evidence of their fraud. I looked at him. You think I should let them file for conservatorship? I think if you want to fully expose their intentions, a competency hearing is the most effective venue. You'd be assessed by a court-appointed psychiatrist who would find you completely competent. Their fraud would be exposed publicly, and you'd have grounds for legal action against them. But that means continuing this performance, escalating it, until they file. Yes? Can you handle that? I thought about it. About months more of pretending to lose my mind, of watching my family discuss my decline, of listening to plans for my future that treated me like a problem to solve rather than a person to love. Yes, I said, I can handle it. Month 6, I escalated to stage 2 symptoms, mild confusion about familiar places, asking where I was in my own home, forgetting the names of objects, getting lost in conversations, seeming unsure who people were for brief moments. Every symptom was carefully calibrated. I knew exactly how far I could go without actually seeming non-functional. I had to appear impaired enough to justify conservatorship, but not so impaired that they'd push for immediate nursing home placement. It was the hardest acting of my life. Every moment of pretending to forget my grandson's name hurt. Every time I had to repeat a question I'd just asked felt like betraying my own intelligence. Every look of barely concealed triumph on Cassandra's face was like a knife. But I kept going. Because I needed to know. I needed proof. They started talking openly in front of me, having conversations about my future as if I wasn't there or couldn't understand. The house is in her name. Once we have conservatorship, we can sell it, get her into a facility and use the proceeds for her care. What about after? If there's money left? Diane doesn't have anyone else. It comes to us. We invested in Emma and Josh's education, buy a bigger house, finally live comfortably. But what if she gets better? What if this is temporary? Michael, at her age, cognitive decline doesn't reverse. It only gets worse. In a year, she won't even remember us. We need to act now. I sat in my armchair, my expression blank, while they planned the sale of my house and my placement in a facility, while they discussed what they'd do with my money once I was gone. And I recorded every word. Month 7, Cassandra made her move. I was sitting in my living room when they arrived unannounced, but they weren't alone. They'd brought someone with them. A man in his 50s, expensive suit, leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Thomas Garrett, an elder law attorney. Mrs. Ashford, he said, sitting across from me, your son and daughter-in-law have expressed some concerns about your ability to manage your affairs. They've asked me to assess the situation and discuss options for protecting your interests. I looked at him with the confused, trusting expression I'd perfected. Options? Legal arrangements that would help ensure your bills are paid, your medical care is managed, and your assets are protected, given your cognitive challenges. My cognitive challenges? Your memory issues, Mrs. Ashford, the confusion you've been experiencing. Your family is worried about you. I'm worried about her too, Cassandra said, taking my hand. Diane, we just want to make sure you're safe. That's all this is. Thomas Garrett pulled documents from his briefcase. What I'm suggesting is that we file for a conservatorship. It's a legal process where the court appoints someone to manage your finances and personal care. In this case, your son Michael. It would ensure that your bills are paid, your assets are properly managed, and you receive the care you need. But I manage my own bills, I said, letting confusion show. Do you, Diane? Cassandra asked gently. You've been forgetting to pay things. We found 3 overdue notices last week. That was a lie. I'd paid every bill on time, but I couldn't prove it without breaking character, and I knew she was counting on that. I don't remember overdue notices, I said. That's the problem, honey. You don't remember. That's why we need to help you. Thomas Garrett laid out more papers. This would be a voluntary conservatorship initially. You'd agree to the arrangement. It's much simpler and faster than having the court impose it involuntarily. I understand Dr. Winters has noted cognitive decline. With that medical documentation and your voluntary agreement, we could have this in place within a few weeks. I looked at the papers, looked at Michael, at Cassandra, at this lawyer they'd brought to my house without warning. I need to think about this, I said. Mom, we've been over this, Michael said, frustration clear. You need help. You can't keep managing on your own. But I am managing. You're not, Cassandra said firmly. Diane, you're not. And if you can't see that, it just proves how much you need this. I felt real tears in my eyes then, not from acting, from the genuine pain of hearing my daughter-in-law tell me I was too far gone to recognize my own impairment, from watching my son nod in agreement. I want to talk to my own lawyer, I said. Thomas Garrett's expression tightened. That's certainly your right. But Mrs. Ashford, I should tell you that resisting this process can make things more difficult. If you refuse a voluntary conservatorship, your family may need to petition for an involuntary one. That process involves court hearings, psychiatric evaluations, and can be much more invasive. It was a threat, subtle but clear. Agree to this now, or we'll force it through court. I'd still like to speak to my lawyer, I said quietly. Of course, Thomas said, standing. But I'd encourage you not to delay too long. Your condition may deteriorate further and delay could put you at risk. After they left, I called Harold immediately. They brought a lawyer to your house, he said, anger clear in his voice. That's coercive. That's elder abuse. I know, but it means they're escalating. Harold, I think it's time. Time for what? Time to let them file. I want them to petition for involuntary conservatorship. I want them on record in court claiming I'm incompetent. And then I want to destroy their case with evidence of my complete competency and their attempted fraud. Diane, are you sure? A court battle will be public. Painful. I'm sure. I have 6 months of recordings, 6 months of journal entries, medical records from Dr. Winters showing I'm completely competent. I have their own words planning to steal my assets. I want it in front of a judge. Then refuse to sign anything, force their hand. I did. When they called the next day, I told them I wouldn't sign a voluntary conservatorship. Michael's voice was strained. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly, Michael. I don't want to give anyone control over my life. You don't have a choice, Cassandra's voice in the background. Michael, she doesn't get to choose if she's not competent to choose. 2 weeks later, I received official court documents, a petition for involuntary conservatorship, filed by Michael Hayes on behalf of his mother, Diane Ashford, who was alleged to be suffering from advanced dementia and unable to manage her person or estate. The petition included a doctor's note from Dr. Winters stating I'd shown signs of cognitive impairment and had been referred for neurological assessment. It included statements from Michael and Cassandra, detailing incidents of my confusion, repeated questions, forgotten conversations. It requested the court appoint Michael as conservator of both my person and my estate, giving him full legal authority over my medical decisions, my living situation, and my finances. The hearing was scheduled for 8 weeks away. I called Harold. It's done. They filed. Then we move forward. I'll file our response. We'll request a full psychiatric evaluation by a court-appointed expert. We'll present your medical records from Dr. Winters showing competency. And Diane, we'll subpoena their communications, their text messages, emails, phone records. If they've discussed exploiting you in writing, we'll have it. They have. I heard them. And some of it's probably in text form. Perfect. Then we build the case. You show up to that hearing as the fully competent woman you are, and we expose their fraud. For the next 8 weeks, I maintained my performance. I had to. If I suddenly seemed competent, they'd withdraw the petition, and I'd lose my chance to expose them publicly. So I continued to forget things, to ask repeated questions, to seem confused about dates and times, every symptom carefully maintained. But privately, I was preparing for war. I met with Harold regularly. We organized 6 months of recordings into a timeline. We matched specific incidents in their petition to recordings, proving I'd been fully aware and competent during those moments. We documented every time they'd discussed my assets, my estate, my eventual death. I met with Dr. Winters. She provided detailed records of my actual cognitive assessments, test results showing I was performing in the 99th percentile for my age group, notes documenting that she'd found no evidence of dementia or cognitive impairment beyond what I'd deliberately performed during the one visit with Michael and Cassandra present. I met with the court-appointed psychiatrist 2 weeks before the hearing, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a specialist in geriatric psychiatry and competency assessment. She spent 4 hours with me, comprehensive cognitive testing, memory assessments, executive function tests, reasoning exercises. She talked to me about my medical career, my research, my life. At the end of the session, she looked at me with a very direct gaze. Mrs. Ashford, you're one of the most cognitively intact 73-year-olds I've ever assessed. Your memory, your reasoning, your insight, all well above average for your age. I let my mask slip for the first time in months. Thank you, doctor. You know what they're trying to do to you. Yes, I know exactly what they're trying to do. And you've been documenting it. Every word, every conversation, 6 months of evidence. Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll be writing my report this week. It will be very clear that you have capacity, that you understand your situation completely, and that this petition appears to be motivated by factors other than your actual cognitive status. Thank you. Mrs. Ashford, I've seen a lot of elder abuse cases. This is one of the more calculated ones. I hope you destroy them in court. Notice how, when Diane asked for basic respect for her autonomy, Cassandra called her not thinking clearly. But when Cassandra brought a lawyer to intimidate an elderly woman in her own home, that was called protection. That's the double standard. Subscribe if you see it and you're done with it. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been told you're not capable of deciding? When you refuse to do what someone else wanted, drop your story and your location. We're building a map of women who refuse to be declared incompetent for having boundaries. This isn't just YouTube. This is documentation. Proof that elder. Coercion is real and common and dressed up as concern. If you've ever been told, this is for your own good by someone trying to control you, comment. My life. My choices. The courtroom moment is coming. And Cassandra's going to wish she'd never heard the word conservatorship. The day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully, professional but not too formal. I wanted to look like myself, competent, composed, a woman who'd spent 41 years as a medical professional. The courtroom was small, family court, closed to the public, just the judge, the court reporter, the attorneys, the parties, and Dr. Morrison. Michael and Cassandra sat on one side with Thomas Garrett. They'd both dressed conservatively, looking like concerned family members rather than opportunistic thieves. I sat on the other side with Harold. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I was ready. Judge Patricia Alvarez entered, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I'd done my research. She had a reputation for being thorough and for having very little patience with elder abuse. We're here for the petition for conservatorship filed by Michael Hayes concerning his mother, Diane Ashford, Judge Alvarez said. Mr. Garrett, present your case. Thomas Garrett stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Ashford is 73 years old and suffering from advancing dementia. Over the past 6 months, her son Michael and daughter-in-law Cassandra have observed significant cognitive decline. repeated questions, forgotten conversations, confusion about dates and familiar places, inability to remember the names of family members. Mrs. Ashford's own physician, Dr. Sarah Winters, noted cognitive impairment and referred her for neurological assessment. He presented his evidence, the doctor's note, statements from Michael and Cassandra detailing specific incidents, a list of unpaid bills they claimed to have found. Mrs. Ashford is at risk, Thomas continued. She can no longer safely manage her finances or her person. She needs the protection of a conservatorship. Her son Michael is willing to serve in that capacity to ensure she receives appropriate care, and her assets are protected. Judge Alvarez turned to Harold. Mr. Chen. Harold stood. Your Honor, this petition is fraudulent. Mrs. Ashford is not suffering from dementia. She is a retired neurologist who deliberately faked symptoms of cognitive decline to test whether her family would exploit her if they believed she was impaired. They failed that test spectacularly. Cassandra's face went white. Michael looked confused. Thomas Garrett's jaw tightened. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Chen, Judge Alvarez said. It's a serious situation, Your Honor. We have evidence that this petition is not motivated by concern for Mrs. Ashford's welfare, but by desire to access her substantial assets. We have recordings of the petitioners discussing Mrs. Ashford's estate, planning to sell her home, and calculating when she will die so they can inherit. We have medical evidence showing Mrs. Ashford is completely competent, and we have the assessment from Dr. Morrison confirming that Mrs. Ashford has full capacity. Your Honor, Thomas said, standing quickly, this is absurd. Mrs. Ashford's apparent clarity today could be a moment of lucidity. Dementia patients often have good days and bad days. I don't have dementia, I said clearly. Judge Alvarez looked at me. Mrs. Ashford, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My son and daughter-in-law have filed a petition to have me declared incompetent so they can control my finances. They believe I have dementia because I deliberately displayed symptoms consistent with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. You deliberately faked symptoms? Yes, Your Honor. I'm a retired neurologist with 41 years of experience assessing cognitive function. After I overheard my daughter-in-law discussing my eventual death and her plans to access my assets, I decided to test whether they valued me as a person or as an inheritance. I faked symptoms. I documented their response. And their response was to attempt to seize legal control of my life and assets. Your Honor, this is exactly what someone with dementia would say, Cassandra said, her voice shaking. She doesn't realize how impaired she is. She thinks she's fine when she's not. Is that your professional medical opinion, Mrs. Hayes? Harold asked. Are you a neurologist, a psychiatrist, a licensed medical professional of any kind? I don't need to be a doctor to see that my mother-in-law is losing her mind. Except she's not your mother-in-law, I interrupted. I'm your husband's mother, and I've heard you refer to me as the old bat, the burden, and the inheritance problem in recordings I've made over the past 6 months. The courtroom went silent. You've been recording us? Michael said. In my own home, where I'm legally entitled to record anyone without their knowledge or consent. Single-party consent state. I know my law, Michael. You should have remembered who raised you. Judge Alvarez leaned forward. Mrs. Ashford, you have recordings? Yes, Your Honor. 6 months of recordings. Conversations where they discuss my assets, plan to sell my house, calculate when I'll die, and scheme about accessing my estate. I also have a detailed research journal documenting every symptom I faked and their response to each symptom. I can provide both to the court. Your Honor, Thomas said desperately, even if Mrs. Ashford was faking symptoms, that itself suggests mental instability. Does it? Judge Alvarez said coolly. It suggests strategic thinking to me. Dr. Morrison, what is your professional assessment of Mrs. Ashford's cognitive status? Dr. Morrison stood. Your Honor, I spent 4 hours assessing Mrs. Ashford. She is cognitively intact, highly intelligent, with memory and reasoning skills well above average for her age. She has no signs of dementia, no indications of cognitive impairment, and full understanding of her situation and her rights. In my professional opinion, Mrs. Ashford has complete capacity to manage her person and her estate. And her decision to fake symptoms? Unorthodox but not indicative of impairment. Mrs. Ashford conducted what was essentially a case study on her own family's behavior. Given her medical background, it was actually a sophisticated research design. "Your Honor, please," Michael said, standing. "I love my mother. I'm just trying to help her." "Sit down, Mr. Hayes," Judge Alvarez said. Her tone left no room for argument. Harold passed documents to the bailiff. "Your Honor, we're providing 6 months of recordings, transcribed and time-stamped, showing the petitioners discussing Mrs. Ashford's assets and expressing hope for her cognitive decline. We're also providing Dr. Morrison's full assessment, medical records from Dr. Winters documenting Mrs. Ashford's actual competency, and Mrs. Ashford's research journal documenting her deliberate testing of her family's character." Judge Alvarez took the documents, spent several minutes reading through transcripts. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I could hear Cassandra's rapid breathing, Michael's foot tapping nervously, Thomas Garrett shifting papers in his briefcase as if searching for some way to salvage this. Finally, Judge Alvarez looked up. "Let me see if I understand the situation." Mrs. Ashford, a retired medical professional, overheard concerning conversations about her estate. She decided to test her family's character by faking cognitive decline. Her family's response was not to provide emotional support, seek proper medical evaluation, or respect her autonomy. Their response was to attempt to seize legal control of her person and assets through this conservatorship petition. "Your Honor, we were protecting her," Cassandra started. "You were protecting her assets," Judge Alvarez said coldly, "for yourselves. I've read enough of these transcripts to see the pattern. Mrs. Hayes, you discussed selling Mrs. Ashford's home before she's even placed in a facility. You discussed finally living comfortably on what would be left after her care. You expressed hope that her condition would worsen quickly. Is that accurate?" Cassandra said nothing. Her hands were shaking. "Mrs. Ashford," Judge Alvarez said, turning to me, "do you wish to have a conservator appointed?" "No, Your Honor. I'm fully capable of managing my own affairs." Dr. Morrison's assessment confirms that. This petition is denied. Mrs. Ashford will retain full control over her person and estate. "Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not finished. Mr. Garrett, your participation in this proceeding concerns me. Did you meet with Mrs. Ashford before filing this petition?" "I met with her once, Your Honor, briefly." "Did you conduct any independent assessment of her competency? Speak to her physicians? Review her medical records?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "I relied on the representations of her family and the note from her physician. A note that said only that she'd shown some signs of impairment and had been referred for assessment, not that she'd been diagnosed with dementia. You filed a petition for involuntary conservatorship based on a referral for assessment? I believe the family's concerns were genuine." "Did you know Mrs. Ashford is a retired neurologist?" "I was not aware of that." "Did you ask?" Silence. "Mr. Garrett, I'm reporting your conduct to the State Bar for investigation. Bringing a conservatorship petition without adequate assessment of the proposed conservatee's actual competency, especially when that person is a medical professional, suggests either incompetence or complicity in elder financial abuse. They'll decide which." Thomas's face went red. "Your Honor, I object." "Your objection is noted and overruled. You're dismissed." Thomas gathered his papers and left the courtroom quickly. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. Judge Alvarez turned to Michael and Cassandra. "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, I want to be very clear about what I've just witnessed. You attempted to seize control of a competent woman's life and assets through fraudulent claims of incompetency. That is elder financial abuse. That is potentially criminal. Your Honor, we thought she was really sick, Michael stammered. Did you? Or did you see what you wanted to see? These transcripts show conversations where you discussed her assets before you discussed her care, where you calculated her death before you considered her treatment, where you planned your financial future using her estate before she's even received a diagnosis. We were just being practical. You were being predatory. Mrs. Ashford, do you wish to press charges against your son and daughter-in-law? I looked at Michael, my son. The boy I'd raised, the man who'd just tried to have me declared incompetent so he could steal my life's work. Not criminal charges, Your Honor, but I am pursuing a civil restraining order to prevent them from accessing my home or making any further claims regarding my competency. That's appropriate. I'm granting a temporary restraining order today. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, you are not to contact Mrs. Ashford, come within 500 feet of her home, or make any further legal claims regarding her competency without independent medical evidence. Violation will result in contempt charges. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Michael said quietly. Cassandra said nothing, tears streaming down her face. This hearing is concluded. The petition for conservatorship is denied with prejudice. Mrs. Ashford retains full capacity and control. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I stood up. My legs were shaking slightly, adrenaline finally hitting after months of careful control. Harold put a hand on my shoulder. You did it. We did it. Michael approached me as we gathered our things. Mom, please. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. You understood perfectly, Michael. You just didn't care. That's not true. I love you. You love my estate. There's a difference. And you taught me that difference over the past 6 months. Please don't do this. You're my mother. Yes, I'm your mother. The woman who raised you alone after your father died, who put you through college, who helped you buy your first house, who loved you unconditionally for 45 years. And the moment you thought I couldn't defend myself, you tried to steal everything I'd built. I wasn't stealing. Yes, you were, and we both know it. Michael, I needed to know if you loved me or my money. Now I know, and I can never unknow it. I walked away, out of the courtroom, out of the courthouse, into the bright afternoon sun. Harold walked with me to my car. What happens now? Now I live my life, on my terms, without waiting for anyone's approval or fearing anyone's exploitation. And your family? I'll have a relationship with my grandchildren if they want one, if they haven't been completely poisoned against me. But Michael and Cassandra, they made their choice. They chose greed over love. They have to live with that. I drove home to my house, the house they'd planned to sell, the house that was still mine, the house that would always be mine. I walked through the rooms seeing them differently now. Not as a prison where I'd performed cognitive decline, but as a home where I'd proven my own strength. I went to my home office, opened my journal, made the final entry. Study concluded. Hypothesis confirmed. When given the choice between supporting a dependent family member and exploiting them, subjects chose exploitation. The performance of cognitive decline symptoms successfully revealed subjects' true motivations. Asset protection measures proved effective. Legal documentation of attempted conservatorship fraud completed. Subjects survived test with autonomy intact. Conclusion: family relationships based on perceived obligation rather than genuine care are unsustainable and potentially dangerous. Recommend termination of contact with subjects to prevent future exploitation attempts. I closed the journal, filed it away with the recordings, the transcripts, the medical records, evidence of what I'd done, proof of what they'd tried to do. That evening, I called my friend Margaret, a colleague from my years at the hospital. I hadn't spoken to her much during my 6-month performance, afraid she'd see through it. Diane, I've been worried about you. I heard you were having memory issues. I'm fine, Margaret. Better than fine. I need to tell you what I've been doing. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the test, the fake symptoms, the conservatorship attempt, the courtroom reveal. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Margaret started laughing. Not cruel laughter. Admiring laughter. Diane Ashford, you are absolutely brilliant. You literally conducted a clinical trial on your own family. I had to know. And now you do. I'm so sorry it turned out this way, but I'm glad you protected yourself. Me too. What are you going to do now? You've been on pause for 6 months. Time to live again. She was right. For 6 months, I'd been performing a role, documenting a study, building a case. I'd put my own life on hold to test theirs. Now the test was over, the results were clear, and I had my whole life ahead of me. I'm going to travel, I said. Remember that medical conference in Barcelona we always talked about attending? I'm going, and then I'm going to Portugal, and then maybe Greece. I'm going to live exactly the way I want to live. Good for you, you earned it. I hung up and opened my laptop. Started looking at flights to Spain, hotels in Barcelona, medical conferences I could attend just for the joy of learning. I had $1.1 million in retirement accounts, $620,000 in home equity, a pension that paid me $4,000 a month. I was 73 years old and in excellent health. I could live anywhere, do anything, answer to no one. That thing Cassandra just did, telling the judge I was too impaired to realize how impaired I am, has a name. It's called circular reasoning as a gaslighting tactic. You can't win because your denial is used as proof of your impairment, and it's epidemic in elder abuse cases. Subscribe if you want to learn more about these manipulation patterns. Knowledge is protection. Let me ask you, have you ever been told you don't even realize how bad you are when you tried to defend yourself? That's the same tactic. Comment, I know myself, and your location. Let's normalize trusting our own perception. Because here's what I learned. They can only make you doubt your own mind as long as you don't have objective evidence. The moment you have recordings, test results, documented proof, you take the power back. Share this with someone who's being told they're incompetent for having boundaries. Where are you from? And what gaslighting tactic do you wish you'd named earlier? 2 weeks after the hearing, I booked my flight to Barcelona, 3 months in Europe. Medical conferences, museums, good food, beautiful cities. Living my life exactly as I wanted. But before I left, I had one more thing to do. I invited Emma and Josh to my house. Just my grandchildren. No Michael, no Cassandra. They came nervously. Emma was 10 now, Josh was 8. Old enough to have heard something was wrong, but probably not old enough to understand what. Hi, Grandma, Emma said uncertainly when I opened the door. Hello, sweetheart. Come in. I made cookies. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where their parents had planned to sell my house, where they'd brought a lawyer to intimidate me, where I'd recorded 6 months of conversations about my decline. Mom said you were really sick, Josh said, reaching for a chocolate chip cookie. Are you better now? I was never sick, Josh. I was testing your parents. Testing them? Like school? Sort of. I wanted to see how they'd treat me if they thought I couldn't remember things, if they thought I was getting old and confused. Emma looked at me with those 2 intelligent eyes, and they failed the test. Smart girl. Just like her father had been before Cassandra got her claws in him. Yes, they did. They tried to take my house and my money. That's mean, Josh said matter-of-factly. Yes, it is. And Josh, Emma, I need you to understand something. Your grandmother loves you. I will always love you. But I can't be around your parents anymore. They hurt me very badly, and I'm protecting myself by staying away. Mom's really mad at you, Emma said. She says you're trying to ruin our family. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just not letting myself be stolen from. But that doesn't change how I feel about you two. You're my grandchildren. And if you want to have a relationship with me when you're older, when you can make your own choices, I'll be here." I pulled out 2 envelopes. Inside each was a letter and a document. "These are for you, not to open now. Open them when you turn 18. Inside is a letter from me explaining everything that happened. And inside is also information about college funds I've set up for you. Enough to pay for university. Your parents don't know about them, and they can't access them. The money goes directly to your school when you enroll." Emma took her envelope carefully. "Why can't we open them now?" "Because you're young, and you shouldn't have to carry adult burdens. When you're 18, you'll understand everything. You'll be able to make your own decisions about who you want in your life, and I'll respect whatever you decide." "What if we want to see you before then?" Josh asked. "Then you figure out a way. When you're old enough to email, you email me. When you're old enough to take a bus, you take a bus. I'm not hiding, Josh. I'm just protecting myself from your parents. But I'm always here for you two." I hugged them both, felt Emma, shaking slightly. She understood more than Josh did. Understood that something had broken that couldn't be fixed. "I love you both," I said. "Remember that. No matter what anyone tells you about me, remember that I love you and I'm protecting myself because I have to." Michael picked them up 30 minutes later. Didn't come to the door, just waited in the driveway, engine running. I watched them walk to the car. Emma looked back once, waved, then they were gone. I cried after they left. Not for Michael, not for Cassandra. For those 2 kids who were caught in the middle, who'd been taught that elderly people were burdens, who'd watched their parents try to steal from their grandmother. I hoped the college funds would help. I hoped when they were adults, they'd read my letter and understand. I hoped they'd be better than their parents, but I couldn't control that. All I could control was protecting myself and being available if they chose to reach out someday. The next day, I finalized the restraining order, made it permanent. Michael and Cassandra were not allowed within 500 feet of me, not allowed to contact me by phone, email, text, or mail, not allowed to make any further legal claims regarding my competency. Harold had also filed a civil suit on my behalf, seeking damages for emotional distress, legal fees, and attempted financial exploitation. Michael and Cassandra would be fighting that lawsuit for years. It wouldn't bankrupt them, but it would make their lives very uncomfortable. And more importantly, it was public record. Anyone who Googled their names would find the lawsuit detailing what they'd tried to do. I also reported them to Adult Protective Services. Even though I'd proven I didn't need protection, the attempt itself was reportable. APS opened an investigation, added them to a registry of individuals who'd attempted elder exploitation. If they ever tried this with someone else, another elderly person, another vulnerable adult, there would be a record of their past behavior. I wanted them to face consequences, not because I was vindictive, but because consequences teach. And maybe, just maybe, facing real repercussions would make Michael understand what he'd done. Though I doubted it. Some people never learn. A week before my flight to Barcelona, Dr. Winters called me. "Diane, I heard what happened in court. I'm so sorry you had to go through that." "Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for the medical records. They were essential to my case." "I'm glad I could help, but Diane, I need to tell you something. Michael called my office. He wanted copies of your medical records. Said he was worried about your health." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I couldn't release your medical records to anyone without your written consent, and that based on his recent legal actions, I wouldn't recommend you provide that consent. He wasn't happy. I bet he wasn't. He also tried to report me to the medical board, claimed I'd been negligent in not diagnosing your dementia." "He what?" "Don't worry. The complaint went nowhere. The board reviewed my documentation of your actual cognitive assessments and closed the complaint immediately. But Diane, he's desperate. He's trying to find any angle to prove you're incompetent. Be careful." "I will. Thank you for warning me." I hung up, feeling cold. Michael wasn't accepting the court's decision. He was still looking for ways to prove I couldn't take care of myself, which meant I needed to be more vigilant than ever. I updated my security system, changed all my locks, installed cameras at all entrances, set up automatic notification if anyone approached my property. I also drafted a letter to be opened only if something happened to me, explaining the situation, naming Michael and Cassandra as having potential motive if anything suspicious occurred, gave copies to Harold, to Dr. Winters, to Margaret, called it my insurance policy. "You really think they'd hurt you?" Margaret asked when I gave her the letter. "I think desperate people do desperate things, and they're very desperate right now. They expected to win. Expected to have access to over $1 million. Instead, they have legal fees, a lawsuit, an APS investigation, and a restraining order. That kind of loss makes people dangerous. Then maybe you should move, start fresh somewhere else." I considered it. "But Margaret, this is my house. I bought it 32 years ago. I raised my son here. My husband died here. Every memory I have is in these walls. I'm not letting them drive me out of my own home." "Then I'm glad you're taking precautions." 3 days before my flight, I was in my garden. It was late afternoon, golden sunlight, birds singing. I was planting tomatoes for a neighbor to tend while I was gone. I heard a car pull up. Turned to see Michael's SUV in my driveway. My heart rate spiked. He was violating the restraining order. He got out of the car alone. No Cassandra. He looked thinner, tired, older than his 45 years. "Mom, please, I just want to talk." I pulled out my phone. "You're violating a restraining order. I'm calling the police." "Please don't. Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "You're not entitled to 5 minutes. You tried to steal my life." I know I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I dialed 911, put the call on speaker so he could hear. 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Diane Ashford at 42 Maple Street. My son, Michael Hayes, is on my property in violation of a restraining order. I need police here immediately." "Officers are on the way, ma'am. Are you in immediate danger?" "I don't think so, but he's not supposed to be here." "Stay on the line with me." Michael's face crumpled. "Mom, please, I just wanted to apologize." "You can apologize in writing, through my lawyer, not by violating a court order." "I've lost everything. Cassandra left me. She's saying the conservatorship thing was all my idea. She's claiming she had no part in it. My job put me on leave because of the lawsuit. My kids barely talk to me. I've lost everything that matters." "You did that, Michael. Not me. You. I know. But you're my mother. Can't you forgive me?" "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting you back into my life. Forgiveness doesn't mean trusting you again. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You tried to sell my house. You calculated when I would die. How do I forgive that? It wasn't about the money." "Yes, it was. Every conversation I recorded, every plan you made, every calculation you did. It was all about money. You didn't love me, you loved my estate." Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Michael heard them too, started backing toward his car. "I'm leaving. Please don't let them arrest me." "You should have thought of that before you came here." He got in his car and drove away fast, just as a police cruiser turned onto my street. The officers took my statement, got Michael's license plate, told me they'd file a violation report with the court. "Will he be arrested?" I asked. "Probably not for a first violation," the older officer said, "but it'll be documented. If he tries again, the consequences will be more severe." After they left, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the sun set, thinking about the man who'd just been here, the boy I'd raised, the son I'd lost. I didn't feel guilty. I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that love hadn't been enough. Sad that Michael had chosen greed over connection. But I didn't regret protecting myself. I'd done what I had to do, and now I was going to live my life. I flew to Barcelona 2 days later, Stayed for 3 months, attended medical conferences, visited museums, ate incredible food, met fascinating people, felt more alive than I had in years. I visited the Sagrada Familia and stood in the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, feeling small and grateful and free. I walked through Park Güell and marveled at Gaudi's vision, at how he'd built something beautiful despite obstacles and setbacks and people who didn't understand. I ate paella at a tiny restaurant in Barceloneta and talked with the owner about her grandmother who'd started the business 70 years ago. I went to Lisbon and took a tram through winding streets, visited Porto and tasted port wine at the source, went to Athens and stood at the Acropolis, and everywhere I went, I was just Diane. Not someone's mother, not someone's burden, not someone's inheritance, just Diane. A 73-year-old woman traveling alone, free. I posted photos on social media for the first time in months. Pictures of Barcelona's architecture, Portuguese azulejos, the Acropolis at sunset. Living my life publicly, showing anyone who cared to look that I was thriving. Margaret commented on every photo. "Living your best life, Diane," former colleagues from the hospital commented. Friends I'd made over the years. Even some of Michael's friends, people who'd heard what happened and reached out to express support. But nothing from Michael. Nothing from Cassandra. Nothing from Emma or Josh, though they were probably still too young for social media. The silence was painful, but it was also liberating. I'd spent 45 years being Michael's mother. Now I was getting to be just Diane. When I returned from Europe, my house felt different. Still mine, still home, but lighter somehow. As if releasing Michael had released weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic that specialized in elder law, helping elderly people understand their rights, recognize signs of financial exploitation, protect themselves from predatory family members. I became, essentially, a professional witness, someone who could say, "This happened to me too. This is how I protected myself. This is how you can protect yourself." It was meaningful work, and it helped me process what I'd been through. Every case I worked on, every elderly person I helped, felt like turning my pain into purpose. 6 months after the hearing, Harold called me. "Diane, the civil suit settled. Michael and Cassandra agreed to pay $50,000 in damages, plus all your legal fees. They also signed an agreement never to make any further claims regarding your competency or your estate." 50,000? It's not about the money. It's about the admission. They're acknowledging wrongdoing. And if they ever try anything again, the settlement agreement makes it much easier to pursue criminal charges. Thank you, Harold. Thank you for trusting me with this. It was one of the most satisfying cases of my career. Watching you reveal your competency in that courtroom, brilliant. I deposited the $50,000 directly into Emma and Josh's college funds, bringing each fund to over $200,000. Enough for full undergraduate and partial graduate education at any school they chose, if they wanted it, if they ever spoke to me again. 1 year after the hearing, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "From Emma." My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Grandma Diane, this is Emma. I'm using Dad's old laptop and he doesn't know. I wanted to tell you that I miss you. I don't understand everything that happened, but I know you're not sick, and I know Mom and Dad tried to do something bad. Josh misses you too, but he doesn't know how to say it. We're okay. Dad and Mom are divorced now. Dad has an apartment and we stay with him on weekends. He talks about you sometimes. He says he's sorry. I don't know if that matters, but I thought you should know. I'm going to save your address. When I'm older, maybe we can talk more. I hope you're happy. Love, Emma." I cried reading it. Relief, joy, grief, hope, all mixed together. I wrote back immediately. "Dear Emma, thank you for writing to me. You don't know how much it means to hear from you. I miss you and Josh very much. I'm proud of you for reaching out. You're smart and brave, just like I always knew you were. I'm happy. I'm traveling and volunteering and living a good life. And I'm always here if you need me. You can email me anytime. And when you're ready, when you're old enough, we can see each other again. I love you. I never stopped loving you. And Emma? The college fund I mentioned that day? It's up to $210,000 now. You're going to be able to go to any school you want. Tell Josh there's one for him, too. Take care of yourself. You're stronger than you know. With all my love, Grandma Diane. I didn't hear back for 2 weeks. Then another email. Really? $210,000? Grandma, that's amazing. Thank you. I want to be a doctor like you. Maybe I'll use the money to go to medical school. I'm doing really good in science. Love, Emma. A doctor. Like me. Maybe something good had come from all this after all. 2 years after the hearing, I was at a medical conference in Seattle, presenting a paper on recognizing cognitive exploitation in clinical settings. How medical professionals could identify when families were exaggerating or fabricating symptoms to gain control over an elderly person's assets. It was based on my experience, my case study, my 6 months of documented fraud. After my presentation, a young woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Dr. Ashford, I'm Julia Garrett, Thomas Garrett's daughter. Thomas Garrett, the lawyer who'd tried to help Michael steal my life. I just wanted to apologize, Julia said. For my father. What he did to you was unconscionable. I mean, he was disbarred, you know. After your case, the state bar investigated and found multiple instances of him filing conservatorship petitions without adequate assessment. Yours was just the most egregious. I didn't know he was disbarred. Last year. He's appealing, but I don't think it'll work. And I wanted you to know I'm finishing law school now. Elder law, actually, because of your case. I want to protect people like you from people like my father. We talked for over an hour about her father's practice, about how many elderly people he'd potentially harmed, about her commitment to being different. Your case changed things, Julia said. The state bar updated their guidelines for conservatorship petitions. Lawyers now have to do independent assessment, review medical records, interview the proposed conservatee personally because of what happened to you. Then something good came from it. A lot of good came from it. You've probably saved hundreds of people from what you went through. After she left, I sat in the hotel lobby and cried. Not from sadness, from overwhelming relief and purpose. I turned my pain into protection for others. My test had exposed not just my family's greed, but systemic flaws in how elderly competency was assessed. My documentation had literally changed legal practice. It had mattered. All of it had mattered. 3 years after the hearing, Emma was 13. She emailed me regularly now. We'd even video chatted a few times when she was at her dad's apartment and he was out. She told me about school, about her friends, about wanting to apply to science programs for high school. She asked questions about my medical career, about what it was like being a neurologist, about how I dealt with difficult patients. She never mentioned the conservatorship, never asked about what her parents had done. And I didn't bring it up. She'd have the letter when she turned 18. Until then, she was just my granddaughter, and I was just her grandmother who lived far away but loved her very much. Josh was 11 now, quieter than Emma, less communicative. But Emma said he'd kept the letter I'd given him, put it in a safe place to open when he was older. That was enough. I'd also heard through mutual acquaintances that Michael had lost his pharmaceutical sales job, was working in retail now, making a fraction of what he used to make. That Cassandra had remarried quickly, found another man with money to fund her lifestyle. That Michael was struggling financially, barely making child support payments. I felt nothing hearing this. Not satisfaction, not sympathy, just nothing. He'd made choices. These were the consequences. 4 years after the hearing, I was 77 years old, still healthy, still traveling, still volunteering, still consulting on elder law cases. I'd published 3 papers on elder financial exploitation, spoken at conferences across the country, trained lawyers and social workers and medical professionals to recognize the signs. I'd built a second career out of my pain, and it was more fulfilling than I could have imagined. I'd also made new friends. Deep friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I had. Women my age who'd been through similar experiences, who understood, who'd also chosen themselves over family obligation. We had a group, the Survivors Circle, we called it. 8 women ages 65 to 82. We met once a month for dinner, shared our stories, supported each other, celebrated our freedom. To women who refused to be victims, we toasted at our gatherings. To women who chose themselves. To women who documented everything. That last one was always mine, because documentation had saved me. Evidence had protected me. Recordings and journals and medical records had proven my truth when my family tried to rewrite it. And I wanted every woman to know, document everything. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself. You're not being paranoid, you're being smart. 5 years after the hearing, I received a letter, actual paper mail, from Michael. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Mom, I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve for you to read it. But I need to say this, even if you never respond, I was wrong. Not just about the conservatorship, about everything. About treating you like you were less important than money. About listening to Cassandra instead of remembering who you were. About forgetting that you were a person, not just a parent or an inheritance. I've spent 5 years thinking about what I did, going to therapy, trying to understand how I became someone who would hurt his own mother, and I've realized, I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a person. You were just Mom, a role, a responsibility, an asset. I forgot you were Diane, a woman with her own life and accomplishments and intelligence, a doctor who'd saved lives, a researcher who'd contributed to medical knowledge, a person who'd raised me alone and sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I forgot all of it. And I'm so sorry. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to be part of your life again. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did. And I'm teaching Emma and Josh different. I'm making sure they know you're a person, that you're brilliant and accomplished and deserving of respect. I'm making sure they never treat someone the way I treated you. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope you're living the life you deserve. I hope someday Emma and Josh get to know you the way I should have known you. With respect, with admiration, with real love, not obligatory love. I'm sorry, Michael. I read the letter 3 times, sat with it for a long time. It didn't change anything, didn't erase what he'd done, didn't make me want him back in my life. But it was something. Acknowledgement, understanding, real remorse maybe. I filed the letter away with all the others. The documentation, the evidence, the history of what had happened. And then I went back to living my life. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. Your life is yours. Your assets are yours. Your autonomy is yours. And no one, not your children, not your family, not anyone, has the right to take those things from you just because you're aging. Being elderly doesn't make you incompetent. It makes you experienced. Having family doesn't obligate you to sacrifice yourself for them. Needing help doesn't mean giving up control. And testing people's character before you trust them isn't manipulation. It's wisdom. Did you like my story? I hope it gave you something. Permission to protect yourself. Validation that elder financial abuse is real, or knowledge that you can fight back and win. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me, have you ever tested someone's character by withholding information? What did you learn? Have you ever been pressured to give up control of your finances or your life decisions? Your story matters. This comment section is proof that you're not alone in facing exploitation disguised as concern. If this video helped you understand that competency isn't determined by age, if it gave you permission to document what's happening to you, if it showed you that you can stand up in court and prove your own mind, please send a super thanks. That's how we fund the next story, the next voice, the next piece of proof that elderly people have rights and deserve dignity. Think of it as investing in the revolution of elders who refuse to be declared incompetent for having boundaries. We're building something here, a community of people who understand that age doesn't erase autonomy, a place where protecting your assets isn't greed, it's self-preservation, where testing family members' character isn't cruel, it's necessary. Subscribe if you're part of this movement. You're not just watching, you're bearing witness. And your witness protects others. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to a 77-year-old woman who refused to be stolen from. And remember, you know your own mind better than anyone else. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself. You deserve autonomy. You deserve respect. You deserve to live your life on your terms, no matter how old you are. And if anyone tries to take that from you, record them. Document it. Fight back. Win. Because you can. I did. And so can you.